So it's now time for the main event, the State of the Global Cruise Industry Keynote. To moderate this opening session, please welcome the editor of Seatrade Cruise News, Anne Kalosh.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the State of the Global Cruise Industry Keynote at Seatrade Cruise Virtual. Thank you to our sponsor, MedCruise, for your support in this session. A recording of this session is going to be uploaded to the platform within the next 24 hours. So if anyone has to leave for any reason, don't worry. You don't have to miss out. Now, we are very fortunate to have the cruise industry's top global leaders here today with us in what I believe is the first time at a conference in 2020. And now, please welcome, and feel free to applaud virtually, Frank Del Rio, President and CEO, Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings. Arnold Donald, President and CEO, Carnival Corporation and PLC. Richard Fain, Chairman and CEO, Royal Caribbean Group. Per Francesco Vago, Executive Chairman, MSC Cruises. Well, gentlemen, lots to discuss, so let's start with the United States. Cruise leaders were scheduled to attend a meeting of the White House Coronavirus Task Force on Friday, which had to be canceled. Arnold, what was the purpose of that meeting and how did it come about?
Well, first of all, good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever everyone is. Glad to be with you all, even if it's just virtually. So it's good to see you. Look, the industry has been working diligently for many months now to first understand with the rest of the world COVID-19, and then secondly, to determine, what our response would be. You started by saying, let's start in the U.S., but actually, we've started in Europe because we now have resumption of cruising in Europe. In our case, with our Costa brand, soon our AIDA brand, obviously Pier Francesco started with MSC, and through the joint venture that Royal has, Richard and company have started with TUI. So we all have sailings in Europe, and there's been a lot of work by all the companies to get prepared for resuming here in the U.S. And so that's what we're working on. That's what we're aspiring to do. That would be the purpose of any meeting at any time that we might have with, whether it's people in administration, the CDC, various departments. And so that's what it's all about, is just collaboratively coming up with, what makes sense to make certain we're all operating in the best interest of public health, and at the same time, giving people the opportunity for livelihood, and of course our guests for the fantastic experience that is a cruise experience, and their opportunity to have lifelong memories.
Arnold, has that White House meeting been rescheduled?
Again, we're collaborating with everyone. There's constant dialogue with various parties, and we are optimistic that we'll be in a position as an industry, in collaboration with the Center for Disease Control, in collaboration with the administration, to resume cruising sometimes this year, but we have to work that out. But we are definitely cautiously optimistic.
Richard, what role did the Healthy Sail panel play in getting us to this point in the United States?
I think we've all worked very collaboratively. All of us have relied on experts and consulted with the leading figures in the medical field and in public health. And I'm really quite pleased to see how much the industry has worked to find ways to learn from the science, because this is all about the science as we've gone forward. I'm very pleased with the Healthy Sail panel. I think Governor Levitt and Dr. Gottlieb put together an amazing group of people. And I do think it helped us and helped the credibility of the industry that they were so transparent about it, that they invited the CDC to participate in their discussions, and that they gave and other observers, other cruise lines were part of the process, and other expert observers. We also, they didn't just give their answers. They explained why they chose this over that. And so I think having a nice, simple document to work from has been constructive. I think it generally shows, and the cooperation amongst the cruise lines shows how much we've learned, how far we've come in 6 months. I think, as Arnold said, the fact that we've started up in Europe, it's been under very strict protocols. It's been done in cooperation with the governments there. And the CDC has been watching that, as has the Healthy Sail Panel. So if all of these things are coming together, there is a time when it just seems right that all the forces are coming together, the knowledge of the disease, the technology, the willingness to work together. And so I'm also optimistic that we're at an important tipping point, and I'm looking forward to expanding the successful work that we've done we as an industry have done in starting up in Europe.
So, Arnold, I'd like to go back to you for a moment. In addition to the CDC, there are a lot of other agencies within the U.S. and outside that are going to need to give the green light for cruising to begin. Can you update us on what's happening with those entities?
Yeah, I think again the entire industry has been working together, and whether it's Homeland Security or Human Health Services, the various ports and destinations, the municipalities, the states. Of course, we're talking the U.S. primarily here, Ann, in your question, but those ships have to go somewhere. So wherever the destinations are, and all the authorities in those destinations. So it is complex. Our industry is a complex industry, so there are many agencies we have to coordinate with, and it's our transportation department. I mean, on and on and on. So the bottom line is we have to, Coast Guard. We have to engage with all of them, and we do on a regular basis anyway. It's the nature of our business, so it's not new, and we are doing that, and we're doing it. I'm very proud to say, as an industry, appropriately as an industry. Because no one competes on health or safety in this industry, and we are collaborating marvelously together. Despite all the difference of opinions and so on, I'm very proud to be associated with my colleagues here, and as we work through things and we work collectively to get us back in sailing again. But there are a plethora of agencies and stuff that have to be coordinated.
Are Caribbean destinations ready to welcome cruise ships?
And if I could just add one thing to what Arnold said, because we focused a little bit on the United States and Europe, but the Caribbean, of course, is so important to our success. And the other area where we need the collaboration and are having the collaboration is very much in the Caribbean. The FCCA, America's Cruise Task Force, is working also cooperatively. And so I second what Arnold said. This is not an area where we're competing. We're all working for the health and safety of our guests and the communities that we serve. And it's really nice to see that collaboration working so well.
Okay, well, we know that the current no-sail order, as well as CLIA's voluntary suspension of operations, goes through October. So I think there was a lot of hope that we might see cruises starting in November, but yesterday, Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings extended its suspension through November. So I would like to gauge everyone on the panel's level of optimism for an ability to restart cruising from the U.S. this year, on a scale of 1 being not very optimistic and 5 being very optimistic. Do you think we'll be sailing from the do you think we'll be cruising from the United States in 2020? Frank?
Hi, Ann. Hello, everyone. Look, we did cancel cruising through the end of November because people have to understand, and I think that the folks that are on this call know the cruise industry well and understand that it takes time to stand up a ship, especially ships that have now been laid up for 6+ months. It is not turning on a light switch. We have to repatriate crew. We have to install the different technologies and the 74 recommendations from the health and safety panel that Richard and I stood up. So there's lots of steps. Certainly the number one obstacle that we need to overcome is the no sail order, but there are others. And so we believe, in the case of the Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings brands, that it will take at least 60 days to stand up a vessel. So if you just count with your fingers and where the calendar is, it's literally impossible for us to operate in the month of November. Perhaps others can or will, but we're looking at post-November as a potential start date if everything else comes along.
Hey, thank you. And I'd like to ask the rest of the gentlemen, when do you anticipate that you will be able to start cruising from the US? From where and what type of itineraries? Per Francesco, I think you might be in a good position to be first, given all your experience in Europe.
Well, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. MSC started operating with the MSC Grandiosa in August, okay? But obviously it's been quite an incredible journey. So as an industry, what everybody was saying, the biggest issue has been to engage with the authorities, to engage with the authorities at all levels. So I can bring the example that we did in Europe, in the southern Mediterranean countries. Obviously, it was not only the engagement at central level with Brussels, with guidelines, then engaging with the Healthy Gateways, which is the appointed university that studies for all the European industry how to ramp up operation. So we engage with them. We talked about cruising because obviously we need to explain how cruising resembles so many other industry under actually in one place. But then we had to go at all levels, being a central government. So we talked to the different countries. I mean, we all saw that, for example, in Europe, everybody was very dysfunctional, especially on the health issues, going in their own directions. Everybody had their own opinion. Everybody had their own decrees, local decrees. So it was an incredible challenge, task, to speak to the authorities, central, different ministries, then go to the destination. Obviously, what's happening also at FCCA in the Caribbean, but imagine going to discuss with the port, with the city, with the region that controls the port and the city, and then reporting again to central government. So this has been, and this is what the industry is facing. And obviously, we took that conversation with the Italian government. Italy gave us the opportunity because of the curve of the pandemic being lower, and we bet in some ways. We are entrepreneurial in that approach. So I refer to what Frank was saying. It takes time to ramp up operation, to bring the crew. And we did it without even knowing if Italian government was going to give us the okay to go and start operation. And they gave us the okay on the 10th, and we started operation on the 16th. And obviously, it was also challenging because we were the first cruise line that not only started with a protocol with 9 core pillars that we applied, and was the initial white paper that we presented to the authorities, but we had to do it also with a different destination, whether it was different ports or Malta or Greece or Spain or France. So allowing not only for local itineraries, but to be an itineraries with a ship of greater tonnage to operate calling different destinations. So, this is what the amazing part of what the industry is doing. And this is what we achieved in Europe. Obviously, going back to your question, we need to do the same now in the Southern Hemisphere. Obviously, there is summer coming up. We need to do it in South America. We need to do it in the Emirates. We need to do it in Africa. We need to do it in the Far East. And obviously, we need to do it gradually, and we need to do it together by bringing whatever is the protocol, by convincing the local authorities that this protocol really can work.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And we'll be talking more about the rest of the world a bit later. But for now, returning to my question about restarting in the Caribbean and your level of confidence, or I should say optimism, on the ability to do so from 1 to 5. Arnold, what's your level of confidence, optimism for being able to restart in 2020?
And our highest responsibilities, and therefore our top priorities, are always compliance, environmental protection, and the health, safety, and well-being of our guests, of the people in the communities we touch, and members of the Carnival family, our crew, shipboard, and then our shoreside personnel. And so it's that commitment, which I know is shared across the industry. They may use different words, but it's a shared commitment. That commitment gives me the optimism that, yes, we will be sailing, sometime this year, and sailing in compliance through all the collaboration with all the people groups we just talked about. We maintain our environmental protection orientation, because while Frank pointed out the ships are laid up, they're still out at sea. They still have minimum crew on it. They're still operating, and then we have to maintain that. And if we have all worked really hard to continue the long-standing history of the cruise industry and with regards to having public health interests in the forefront. And so, as you know, we've dealt with viruses in the past. This one's unique. It's different, but we've dealt with MERS and SARS and Zika and Ebola and all these things in the past. So your question about the U.S. on a scale of 1 to 5, I'm optimistic. I'll say a 4.9, even though you can never predict regulatory when that will happen, if the city even try. But in terms of optimism, I'd say 4.5, 4.9. But it's because I know the commitment of this industry and of us to make certain that we're doing it in a way where we are going to stand out relative to the rest of the travel sector. We're going to stand out relative to many other sectors of business and social gathering and commerce, with protocols, as we are in Europe, that go well beyond what anyone else is doing.
Richard, what is your level of optimism on the 5-point scale that will be cruising from the U.S. this year?
Well, I'm not very good at putting probabilities on things, but my confidence level or my optimism level is very high, and it's for the reasons that the others have said. First of all, we've made very clear we're eager to get back into work. Our people are eager to get back into work, but we're not going to do it until we're all confident that it is safe and healthy. And we've really taken advantage of this lull to study the science. It's really extraordinary how much we have learned. The sailings in Europe, which have been so successful, also serve as a test bed for us. So we can see what's happened. We can see what's working. And that's been very successful. The Healthy Sail Panel report, detailed look at 74 protocols, 74 recommendations that give us the confidence that it's safe to go back. The work that the FCCA, America's Task Force, Cruise Task Force, is doing, because the destinations are just as important as what happens on the ship. But what we have seen is that it is possible. In fact, our objective when we started was, can we do this in a way that makes being on a ship as safe or safer than being in your hometown? And I remind you that while there are special circumstances on ship that require special precautions, there's also something that no one else has, which is the ability to control the environment as well as we do. And so you just heard Kelly Craighead, the CEO of CLIA, announcing that the cruise industry has agreed on 100% testing of every person entering a ship. No other industry in travel does that. Nothing. Not airlines, nothing. In fact, I don't know of another industry in the world that does 100% testing. And we can do that because of the special features of a cruise ship. So I think the other thing that you're hearing, and you're hearing it from us and you're hearing it from others, is a level of collaboration. We're all working in this together. We all are learning about COVID. We're all learning about the technology, the testing, the therapies. All of these things are coming together. Working with the governments abroad, working in Europe, in the Caribbean, in Asia, in the United States, working with the CDC. I think we have put together, with the Healthy Sail Panel, with all the other experts that have weighed in, I think we have a set of procedures that really put us in a position to say, yes, we have now come to the point where we can provide a healthy cruise. And I think that means, and we're going to do it slowly. We're going to start with test cruises, I think, and then a few shorter cruises and gradually build up as we build up our experience. But I do think that's going to start this year. I'm highly optimistic.
So is that a 5?
I started out by saying I wasn't going to give a number on it. I don't like putting numbers on things like this, but I am smiling.
And Frank, what about you?
He's smiling.
We started it.
I'm in. This is not a race. I am in no rush to be the first one out of the gate. I want to do things correctly. I want to cross all the T's, dot all the I's. 74 recommendations are a tall order. Some are easier to implement than others. But as others have said, we will not cruise until we believe it is 100% safe to cruise. And it's coming soon. Whether it's December 22nd or January 3rd, I think we're in the ballpark. And I think that if a couple of things go our way, we could be sailing again soon. How's that?
Okay, no number like Richard, huh?
No number.
Okay. Per Francesco, how about you? What's your level of optimism that the cruise industry may be able to sail from the US in 2020 on a scale of 1 to 5?
I'm very optimistic in general. So in this business, you gotta be optimistic. I follow what everybody else is saying in the sense that whatever we do as an industry, it's unique. There is no other industry in the travel, hospitality, vacation that is actually presenting, engaging with the authorities the ways that I was describing before, going to local level, to regional level, to central level like we are doing, actually showing and engaging and showing not only 74 recommendation, but pillars, in-depth protocol with 100% testing. Okay, this is unique. So I'm sure that everybody's watching, authorities are watching, not only we talking to them, but this process of talking, understanding, sharing with each other, what a new normality, what a new society must be, because we're living in this society, we're living with the pandemic going on, and actually approaching and being one of the first industries that says 100% testing. It's unique if you think about it. It's amazing. I mean, here we're talking about, and I said it maybe in other occasions, everybody's talking about vaccines, okay? Vaccines won't be the magic wand, okay? Vaccine will be part of the solution, but testing will be the solution. Testing, before you get into an airport, before you get into a plane, before you enter into an hotel. So testing will define exactly. I mean, we've seen from WHO that the numbers of asymptomatics are huge, are in the double digits. So we need to isolate all that. And this is what the cruise industry is offering. Is offering the professionality and approach, okay, that I'm sure everybody must be listening to, of doing, guys, let's test. We see that technology is advancing. There is incredible technology. I mean, we started with the PCR technology, which, and I said it before, it's almost an anachronistic technology of testing. It's old, it's expensive, it takes a long time to have a result. You lacking of reagents. Okay, we see all the medical, the pharmaceutical coming with the quick test, antigen test, all saliva test, not tests that can give a result in very few minutes. So with all this that we bring in, with all this work with all our panels, with all our scientific committees, I'm sure that all this work that we're presenting to the North American authorities, and like I was saying before, to the rest of the world, it cannot be ignored. So that's my positive approach. It's positive, and I want to finish, it's positive, but it's also professional, concrete, and pragmatic. So it's not just positive. It's based on facts. Sorry.
And I was just going to say, we're a city at sea. That's what cruise is. And so people often want to compare it to airline or this, that, or the other. But when you look at an airplane, what happened on the way to the airport? What happened in the terminal? What happened on the plane? What happened when they got off the plane in another terminal? What did they get into when they left the terminal? Where were they going? And what did they do once they left the airport? So we are a city at sea because, we not only bring people onto a ship, they have a cabin, there's casinos, there's restaurants, there's, entertainment venues, there's amusement activities. And so what amusement park is testing everybody before they come in? What theater, where theaters open, is testing everybody before they come in? What city is testing all of their citizens, okay, before they let them move about and engage in all those different activities? And so we are truly, just with the simple concept of 100% testing, we're truly, standing out, dramatically. And so I hope everyone in the cruise industry, feels proud of the level of commitment and responsibility expressed by all the people on this panel today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Arnold. And there's no doubt the industry has made a lot of progress considering what's happened in the past year. But I'd like to just turn back for a moment to the unfortunate events of the spring. And Frank, I'll put this question to you, if I may. With the high-profile outbreaks and quarantines, do you think those will have a lasting impact on the cruise industry?
No, I don't think it'll be lasting. Look, I think it's lingered around a bit, but we've seen in the past 6 months that those kinds of situations occur throughout society. I mean, look what happened last Friday in Washington, D.C. So I don't believe that it will have a long-term effect. I think the future business that we are all booking, which we all believe is a lot stronger than you'd expect it to be, given that the industry is completely shut down, that our sales and marketing efforts have been literally turned to zero. Travel agents, many of them are not working. Ports around the world are closed. Against that backdrop, that we are booking as much business as we are booking for the future shows that the resiliency of our industry is alive and well. In the case of my two brands, and we put out 8Ks in the last month, we have two examples to indicate that business is so strong. So the Oceania brand had their best holiday sales efforts ever. And just last week, we announced that the Region 7 Seas brand had a record 2023 debut of their world cruise. It sold out. We've never sold out a world cruise, within a week or so of launching. So, and these aren't cruises to nowhere. These aren't cruises to our private islands. These are around the world cruises, the exotics. People want to get back to their normal life. This pandemic is an interruption in their normal life. People love their normal lives, and we want to go back to it. And that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing that cruising is going to come back strong. This is a bump in the road. We're going to come back smarter. We're going to come back in a way that, as we've all said, puts health and safety even more at the forefront than we've ever had before. This has been a very safe and healthy industry. We hear about the virus on board the ships, whether it's corona or norovirus, because we're the only industry that has to report situations of disease on board. Hotels don't have to do it. Resorts don't have to do it. Airlines don't have to do it. No one does it. We do it. So we think that is healthy. We think that makes us be better operators because we are completely transparent. There's nothing for us to hide. By law we have to report, and we're happy to do so. We've been doing it for years. So we believe that what's happened in the last 6 months is unfortunate. No industry has taken it on the chin more than the cruise industry. We're the only ones that I know of that has been shut down, period, end of story. But we're eager to come back, and we're going to come back, and we're going to come back very, very strong. We're all in good financial positions. Bookings are good. And so the optimism level is much higher than it's been in a long, long time.
And let me add a little bit of color to the emergency timing, okay, when obviously that we leave at the beginning. I like to point out that a lot of the authorities, the local authorities, didn't know what was going on. And they imposed on the cruise industry generally, depending on the geographical region, different interpretation of how the emergency had to be handled. And this created confusion. There was ignorance of how to approach, how the virus spread. I mean, we had that ignorance for a long time staying. And obviously, many of us had to adapt and understand in a very sudden mode how to create the safe cocoon, with the ship itself. So yes, we said it so many times, ships are sexy and they attract attention. So if anything happens to some other industry, nobody cares. If something happens to a cruise ship, wow, you are in the front page all over the world. But nobody's talking about the incredible job that all of us did by actually bringing back, and we heard Kelly before in the introductory speech, how to bring back all the passengers that we brought. I mean, MSC alone, I'm talking about myself, obviously. I mean, I brought back 80,000 passengers back home safely. I brought back 35,000 crew members home safely. In a world where, airports, borders were shutting down, the dysfunctionality between all the Ministry of Health all over the place, not knowing, everybody, countries not accepting passport holders, their own national, their own citizen going back. And we started to learn very fast. Okay, we learn very fast. Not only we learn very fast, but we started to adapt to the situation. And again, I just want to raise, I can talk about MSC Magnifica. MSC Magnifica arrived in Marseille on the 20th of April. It became Noah's Ark. Okay, people didn't want to disembark because we worked it out as the pandemic was progressing, how to handle. We started to using, fresh air. We started to do quick wins, quick intervention to the operation of the ships, so to take care of the emergency. So to answer yes, we did have problems, but what we're saying today, what we're presenting today, what we're talking about protocol, recommendation, everything you're hearing today is an evolution of an industry that has learned and that is taking the lead once more to actually offering not only a sterile vacation in a sterile environment, but a platform that from the learning, from the lesson learned, can actually be again unique. Like some of us were mentioning before, I mean, the cruise industry all these years have learned that we reacted, whether it was political, whether it was geopolitical, whether it was security, whether it's safety. This own industry has always managed to get together and come back stronger than before.
Okay, well, just a question about big ships. The virus has been closely associated with crowds. How do you overcome the perception of risk on ships where you have thousands of passengers gathered? The perception of risk. Pier Francesco? Richard?
Well, I'll start, but I think it's interesting you talked about the perception of risk. I think the key in so many of these areas is information. That is actually why I thought the Healthy Sail panel was so important, because it's based on science and not on perception. And the fact is, yes, crowds are a problem everywhere in the world, but the larger ships simply spread them out more. And when we're talking about the protocols going forward, just as on land, we're talking about until the times are safer. We're talking about social distancing. We're talking about masks. So that is something that all the experts have looked at, and we feel quite good that the larger ships offer the opportunity to spread people out and to avoid that kind of contagion. I really come back to it. It's really quite interesting that although ships, every environment is different and every environment has its pluses and its minuses. The big plus that ships have, and all the experts that we've been consulting with reinforce this, is the ability to control the environment, the ability to do the most important thing, of course, is to reduce the chances of COVID getting into the environment. And so that point that we are the only industry in the world doing 100% testing is very important. But also the ability to control the environment once on board, to have all the ways of making sure that the transmission is less. So, as I said before, our objective was and is to have you have a healthier time on board a ship, a lower risk than you do in your hometown. And the recommendations that have come forward, the protocols that we've all been talking about, that we've all been working on for 6 months, really have really focused on this, really allow us to accomplish that objective. And perception, that's something else, but you're already seeing it. The success of the various cruise lines that are operating in Europe, people need to see it and then say, oh yeah, oh, that really does work. And I think you're seeing that here, and that's why the collaboration with the authorities in the countries that we sail from, like the United States or Europe, or the countries that we sail to, both in the United States, Europe, and in the Caribbean, so important. And that's, again, what's giving me confidence of our ability to go forward based on science, not on perception.
Okay. Well, we've talked about the United States. Sorry, go ahead, Arnold.
I was just going to say that, as Richard said, the large ships, give you the opportunity for physical distancing and the perception thing. The best way, of course, is through testimonials. And, we have lots of guests who have been on large ships, and they'll be the first ones to tell you that one of their big surprises, if they've gone on one for the first time, was how much space, personal space, there is on the ships, and the opportunity and so we have the opportunity in the public spaces, the theaters, the Lido deck, other places, put in the physical distancing measures that people would see similarly shoreside for as long as that's needed. As this pandemic continues to run its course, and so we're particularly suited. And in terms of perception broadly, the beautiful thing is we have a huge base of previous cruise goers. And in our case, and I'm sure it's true for the industry, there's a lot of repeat cruisers. We're not going to be able to have all the ships come out at sea at once. That's not going to happen because destinations are going to open up at different times, as you're seeing in Europe and as you're going to see elsewhere. And so there'll be a staggered return. And we have a lot of pent up demand. So we'll have plenty of time with the previous cruise goers. And we are all booking new cruisers now as well for future sailings. As Frank pointed out, it's 2023, but even into the second half of next year, we've got a lot of new to cruise booking. And so that combination of small number of ships to begin with, pent up demand, people who haven't been able to cruise, who normally would be doing repeat cruising, gives us time as an industry to manage through. And the more experience people have, and the longer this thing goes, and the more science and understanding there is behind it, and our ability to react to it, I don't think the industry is going to be faced with a long-term challenge here. So, go ahead.
And Ann,
I'd like to make one more.
I agree with Richard and Arnold said about big ships. More room to spread them around. But let's not forget the smaller ships that by definition have a higher space ratio than the big ships. And more likely than not, we will all start with a reduced capacity. So the combination of reduced capacity, the higher space ratio, many of the smaller vessels have a overabundance of balcony cabins that facilitates the airflow, the fresh air that's so important. In some cases, they're 100%. In the case of Regent, every single vessel is 100%, a balcony cabin. And so we feel confident. The 74 recommendations where there's no one silver bullet. The one most important is the testing. And we're all committed to testing, 100%. But it's the multi-layer approach so that if recommendation 51 somehow fails, that's okay because there's 73 other to support it. It is, the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes 74 recommendations to create a health and safety environment. So what we need is the opportunity. Europe has granted that opportunity, and I'm glad to see my colleagues performing so well. They've executed flawlessly. I take my hat off to Pier Francesco and to Arnold and to Richard for TUI. Done a fantastic job. And it's one thing to see things on paper. Another one is to see it in reality. They've demonstrated now for quite some time. Over 50,000 people, over 100 sailings have taken place in Europe. And we can show proof positive that we can operate in this environment safely.
I just want to add one thing, Ann, which is the people on this call can be helpful. We need the people that know the industry to get that word out. You talked about perception. I think one of the big factors there is going to be the travel advisor community, their ability to explain things. I think people need to know the facts, and I think we need our friends to help us get those facts out.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we've talked a lot about the protocols. There are many, many things, many layers of protocols. But will the industry be able to preserve the classic cruise experience that everyone knows and loves so much? Pier Francesco, have you been able to preserve the cruise experience in Europe? And how are your guest satisfaction ratings?
Actually, it's amazing because the satisfaction is extremely high. Not only we have consumers, this pandemic has had an incredible psychological impact on society. Okay, we have people living at home, being afraid, being in their own little flat, and as they discover that they can go back to nature in the middle of the sea, they can actually see a sunset, and they can actually mingle, and they can actually enjoy themselves, and they can have a drink and talk to other people in a safe mode, in a safe cocoon. People are so enthusiastic. You won't even believe it. It's amazing. We actually have people that are booking back-to-back cruises, staying on board because they're saying, "Why am I going back home? What am I going back home to?" Okay, that is the principle: testing, sterile, safe cocoon, and so you're protected. But then all the services inside, obviously, I go back to new society, new normality. We all wearing mask. We all having precautions. We all disinfecting our hands. I mean, it's part of everyday life for all of us. And obviously, by implementing this, the recommendation, the pillar, as we go along, the rest of the experience stays the same. So instead of having maybe 2 shows, we have 3 shows, so that we guarantee social distances. There were some concern and comments about the buffet. Okay, the buffet, we still are working, and instead of having people helping themselves and serving themselves and possibly exaggerating in their portion like there is no tomorrow, now they actually go to someone that actually serves them, so there is a protection, so there is a plexiglass, there is a protection between the passenger and whoever serves them, but actually we improve the servicing by helping, assisting the customer on the plate. So all the entertainment, the pool, the outside areas, all the fun stays. And people, not only they enjoy the experience, they enjoy cruising for everything that he offers, but they feel safe. And why do they still feel safe? Is because of testing, because they know that everybody that is in there is being tested. Everybody that is in there is controlled and cleaned. Okay, obviously, we can have contingency plans, but that is a part again of the approach that we have to give that peace of mind to the passenger.
Okay, we've talked a great deal about.
And I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I think it's so important, and people understand this, but with all the protocols we have, there's still likely eventually at some point to be a case on board, because if it's in the community overall, there's no perfect system to prevent it. And so we as an industry have spent an enormous amount of time on what happens if there's a case on board. First, all the measures to mitigate that. Then all the measures to mitigate spread if there is a case, that the case is isolated or relatively isolated. And then what do we do to ensure that that person is well taken care of course, but also that everyone else can go about their business just as if they were in a city and somebody they were had COVID, and they can continue with their life. And so we spent an enormous amount of time working on that, and that's the other psychological comfort. We have the medical centers on board, we have the medical screening, we have temperature checks, we have, et cetera. And we have all those other protocols: physical distancing, mask wearing, ventilation, all those things to mitigate spread, to isolate cases, to be able to take care of them and get them off to better care, and to minimize spread on the rest of the ship. And I think that's that holistic approach that Pierre Francesco was referring to creates the context. So then people can do what they want to do on a cruise, which is, build lifelong memories and have fun. And so far in Europe, it's been working. Our experience with Costa is similar to Pierre Francesco's with MSC. People are enjoying the cruises. The satisfaction ratings are very high. We have as Esmeralda, one of our largest ships in Costa, will be sailing October 10th with a couple of thousand guests on it. So we'll have a lot more guests on that ship, and we're excited to see how the dynamics work. But it's worked really great so far. for the guests.
Well, clearly, all of you have talked about testing, testing, testing over and over again as a real key linchpin in all of this. And I just would like to be clear, we're talking about passengers getting themselves tested before they arrive at the cruise terminal.
Yes, I
In
think
Europe,
so. We are talking about testing before the guests arrive, or depending on where, and there are different protocols. No person will board a ship without a test. But I want to come back. I think we shouldn't. No, that's sort of the sexy part of it, and it's a key part of it, is to keep the virus off the ship. But as Frank said earlier, it's a layered approach. No one thing by itself deals with it, but you have these layers of approach, that you do testing, but you also do monitoring on board. You also have protocols for reducing the transmission on board. And the other thing is that a lot of people aren't so concerned about getting the disease. They're concerned about somebody else getting the disease and their holiday ruined because of it. And I would come back to Arnold's point, because I think it's an important one. That is something people really are concerned about. And interestingly, when the Healthy Sail Panel did its work, it spent a lot of time focusing on that. The result has been that we have extensive protocols to make sure that if there is a case, just as you would in Miami or any other place, you take care of that case, and you isolate those people, but you don't do it elsewhere. And we just had an instance where we had, in effect, a chance to try this out, because we had some people who showed up positive on a test. Turns out that it was a false positive. They weren't sick, but actually it was kind of a nice test, because we showed we dealt with it quickly, we dealt with it properly, it didn't affect the other guests on board, and we worked closely with the governments involved, and no government resources were needed to deal with the problem, because we had taken the issue under our consideration and had focused on it. So yes, we talk about testing, because I think testing, both in society and on a cruise ship, testing, and by the way, contact tracing, which ties in very closely with testing, I think those will dramatically change it in society and on a cruise ship. But we're not just relying on the testing. It is this layer that's so important.
Okay, well, contact tracing, you touched on something I wanted to ask you about particularly, Richard, because I often associate you with technology as being something that you think is really cool. What role does technology play in health safety on cruise ships?
Well, I think, again, all of us are using technology, and fortunately, we are in much better position than we would have been 5 or 10 years ago, because we do have a cashless society. Essentially, all the cruise lines, we have electronic means of paying for things without necessarily contacting each other. We're very excited about our facial recognition, because that has helped a lot. Mustering, which we talked about before, and now all of us are using separated mustering. So, and by the way, it's better anyhow, because each person is getting a personalized mustering training, rather than the crowds that we used to do. Contact tracing is another thing. The same technology or other technologies allow us today to say, where have you been? Who have you been close to? So again, and you know, in society they're talking about this. Apple and Google have been talking about it for months, but we don't have anything really yet. But on a cruise ship, again, because we have so much better control of the environment, we're able to do contact tracing on a cruise ship so much better than you're going to find in any community on land. So again, it comes back to There's no such thing as zero risk, but we have reduced the risk and we have used the technology. It's staggering how much better the technology is, and contact tracing is an important element of that, which also facilitates if there's an incident, and as Arnold said, there probably will be, given the volumes and given what's happening in society, we can insulate it, isolate it, and take care of it without inconveniencing our guests, our crew, or very importantly, the societies in which we operate, the communities that we go to and the communities we sail from, and the governments involved. We have pre-planned programs to take care of it. So it's a very different world today.
Well, thank you. We've talked about cruising in Europe. We've talked about the United States. Let's spend a few minutes on the rest of the world and the resumption of cruising in places like China, Australia, South America. Per Francesco, could I ask you to take the lead on that question, please?
Yeah, obviously that's a very important part of the staggered ramp up of operation that all of us are looking forward to. Obviously, the challenge is the engagement and presenting the protocol. So I'm very glad that today we're talking and we're introducing this staggered layer of different intervention or different actions that we're taking on ships that defines the protocol, that defines the bubble of the ship. Obviously, this job that we are doing today, and I'm happy that there are destinations. I'm happy that Richard before mentioned that we should have the travel agency world pass on the message. We need the destination to do the same. Destinations are very important partners in our effort. They're important stakeholder. They understand the economical impact that we have on this coastal society as a cruise industry. And that is exactly what we try to do with the various authorities around the world. So obviously, I think it will be very much, hopefully, a snowball effect, because obviously when you put in practice what is on paper, what you can prove it, once you make it tangible, once you can touch and see how it works, with all the contingencies. So in its whole, in this holistic approach, like Arnold was saying, I think that a lot of the authorities around the world will appreciate, will understand, and possibly in a proactively way will contact, will engage to see, okay, let's sit down, let's see how we can actually ramp up operation. We, on our case, we are exactly there. We understand we have our fleet position geographically in such a way that we can pick up momentum. So we have ships in North America, we have them in the Med, we have them in the Emirates, we have them in the Southern Hemisphere, in South America, we have it in Asia. So we're ready to take the moment. And obviously, as the discussion, as the relationship, the presentation of our capability as an industry, with everything that has been said so far, hopefully we will see an acceleration with various geographical parts of the world ready to have operation cruise lines operating again. And this is exactly part of the incredible task that we all doing here jointly together, whether it's North America, whether it's Europe, whether it's Northern Europe, whether it's Asia, whether it's the Southern Hemisphere.
Arnold, your brands have ships all over the world, and there was a recent development in the UK. Could you please update us on that? And also, how soon do you think that you might be able to start sailing from the UK again?
Well, concerning the UK, obviously we've been collaborating in the UK as we have everywhere else. The advice in the UK concerning travel in general is still, and cruise in particular, the advice from the authorities is still, not to cruise until sometime next year. We'll see if that changes over the coming weeks or months or not, and I'm sure it'll be dependent on their assessment of the pandemic in the UK itself. But what we have great cooperation there and collaboration. But you asked about China and Australia and other places. All of these nations are dealing with, the pandemic in their own way. They have their own populace that they're dealing with in terms of how to engage more broadly. When are they really going to be comfortable with social gathering? When are they going to be comfortable with their citizens going abroad and coming back, allowing citizens from other nations to come back? And so, while cruise is extremely important to us, we're just a small part of society overall, and we're going to have to fit into that. And so, Australia, New Zealand, New Zealand was holding football matches, soccer matches, and rugby matches in stadiums with 90,000 people present. But they still weren't ready to let people from outside come into New Zealand. This was a month or two ago. And so we'll see how it all plays out. And that's just where it is. So it's a step every day. Is absolute collaboration, coordination, sharing of information. And so I'm optimistic that we'll be able to sail in the UK soon. At this time, they've declared not until next year, and we'll see how that plays out.
Okay. Well,
May I just add an important point that I forgot is also the cross-border capabilities of consumers to move around from different ports of embarkation, which is a further complexity in the effort that we're doing. And again, as we take in leadership as an industry, to actually talk to the authorities to allow, according to the local decree, local permissions. And another important factor is the air industry, because obviously whenever there is a fly and cruise operation, so not only the capability of nationals moving across and embarking from different ports, from different countries, but as well the relationship that we need and to establish and our protocol that we need to implement even with the airlines, because obviously once there is a fly and cruise operation, we will need again to have that approach of testing, that approach of cruise line protocol to be introduced to other means of transport, to other transport industry, so that they can actually see the benefits of creating that bubble, that corridor, that safe experience, even if there is obviously a ship operating from a port that you can only reach by different means of transport or by flying, which is also an important point.
Okay, thank you. Well, I see we're coming to the end of our time. An hour just flew by, but I would like to ask all of the speakers if they would please address one final question. New build orders are the ultimate sign of confidence in the cruise industry's future. Orders have been delayed during this pandemic, but to my knowledge, no one has canceled any cruise ship orders. When will you place your next new build order? Frank?
Did you say Frank?
Would you like to start, Frank?
Sure. So as you know, we have 9 vessels on order across our 3 brands. For Norwegian and Oceania, these are prototypes, so we've yet to take delivery of our first one. So I think I'll take delivery of at least 1 vessel for those brands before I start thinking about additional orders. In the case of Norwegian, it's 6 ships. That's a lot through 2027, so we have time. For Oceania, it's through 2025, so we have time. So the likely brand that we will consider a new build first will be for the Regent brand, because Regent is expecting the 3rd and final Explorer class vessel in 23, and 23, is around the corner. So I won't tell you a specific date, but I will tell you that the likely brand that would see a new build order placed would be for the Regent brand.
Okay, Richard?
So that's definitely a shift in focus. As you pointed out to start with, Anne, none of us have canceled ships, but the COVID-19 has disrupted supply chains, disrupted the situations at shipyards, and so one of the things which, from my perspective, is unfortunate. It means we're delaying a number of ships that we would be excited about having today. And we already had a very long-term lead time. So I think it's a little early for us to start speculating on what happens, given that the ships that we have on order are already going to take longer to deliver than the very long lead times we had before. But I think I can put it in context. I'm optimistic that we're going to start operating this year, but we've also made it clear that that startup is going to be a slow ramp up. But at the end of that, I think one of the things that we've seen is that cruising is still a very attractive vacation option. So I think this is not, the industry is going to tail off. I think what you're going to see is the industry will continue to grow. I think people want their vacations. I think they'll want them more than ever. I think when we're past this crisis, people will see the value of cruising. I find it remarkable that we are getting exceptionally high ratings from our guests, even with all the protocols that are in place on the ships that are operating today. I think the protocols will taper off as the science gets better, as the technology, the treatments, and the testing, and all those things get better. So I think that the industry has a very bright future that will call for growth. Exactly when we place an order, that really hasn't been top of my mind right now.
Okay. And very quickly, Per Francesco, I'll give you the opportunity, and then Arnold.
Thank you, Anne. Well, I tend to agree with what Frank and Richard says, meaning I don't think people should be concerned about new ships coming out, being delivered soon, because we all have quite an important industrial plan already in place. As far as I'm concerned, for MSC, we have 11 ships on order. So, I mean, I don't think anybody should be concerned about new ships being placed. I mean, we have enough already on order that must be delivered. And I tend to agree also with the comment that Richard made, that there has been a disruption on the yards, obviously, with delays, delivery, all the supply chain that had some disruption. So already there are some organic delays in the deliveries per se. So I think the industry looks strong, looks solid. There is growth. And I know that when we go back to all normal and during new normal, again, the moment that the consumer out there will understand, the moment that the consumer, we will have the go-ahead from the authorities, and the consumers will see what it is that we're proposing again through a cruise vacation, through a cruise experience. I think not only we will be incredibly happy to the results that we already seen. We heard some of the bookings already been placed for the present, for the future, but again, for going back to old normal, where all these ships will come on stream and will be able to sailing and again carry on the growth before obviously the pandemic started.
Thank you. And just briefly, please, Arnold.
All right. With 9 World Cruise brands, we have quite a book of orders for new ships. In fact, we just took delivery last week of Enchanted Princess, the newest ship in the Princess. We just took delivery of a new ship, and our orders go through 2025 at least. And so there's plenty of new ships on order. But to be honest with you, they are going to be needed. The industry was on a good growth path. Obviously, this has been a disruption. But as everyone has pointed out, over time, we'll be back to where we were. And where we were was over 500 million people were taking vacations around the world annually. 30 million were cruising. And our ships were full. So there will be demand, there will be need for capacity. The shipbuilding will stay robust in terms of bringing new cruise ships into the global fleets. And I just want to say before we go, everybody make sure you wear your mask, okay? Because if you do that, we can all get there a lot faster. So make sure you're wearing your mask. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's advice we can all endorse. Thank you, Arnold. And thank you gentlemen, for ending on that optimistic note. That's all we have time for today. A huge thank you to our panel, Frank, the masked Arnold, Richard, Per Francesco. Good luck to you all. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of Seatrade Cruise Virtual, and I hope that you will come back with me together on Thursday when I'm going to be moderating the closing keynote address. This time next year, a no-holds-barred look into the crystal ball from some of cruising's most forward-thinking leaders. Thank you all. Bye for now.
Take care. Bye-bye.